Another interesting point, kind of talking about like the drowsy and not awake, and then thinking about sleep pressure. Because you and I, we talk a lot about sleep begets sleep because we see it tried and true. The more you sleep, the more you want to sleep. So when we first start working with babies, a lot of times or toddlers, they're overtired. Parents are too. They haven't been sleeping well, right, for weeks, months, years, even sometimes. So sometimes there's this hump where they need to catch up. And I talk a lot about this backpack of full of bricks. And as an adult, we are always carrying around this backpack full of bricks. And, we try and take bricks out, but really we can never empty it. We can never pay off our sleep debt. But for little babies, they can kind of catch up on their sleep. So a lot of times we see where the first few days they're really tired, they're really sleepy, they need to go down, they have long naps, they have lots of good sleep, and then it kind of starts to taper off. Once we get to that balance where, they're sleeping 11 to 12 hours every night, then we start to see where, well, really even before, this whole sleep begets sleep, where we want to encourage them to sleep so then they can have good sleep. So a good example of this, and I'm sure you've seen it, I'm sure everybody listening has seen this, where we keep our kids up later than they should, whether we do it on purpose or just that's life. They maybe take a little bit longer to fall asleep. They eventually fall asleep, though then sometimes they wake up in the night and they wake up usually crying because they're overtired. Or what usually happens now with, say, my older kids is they go to bed later than normal and they wake up at least a sleep cycle earlier than they usually do. And a lot of that has to do with the late bedtime. There's this myth where that late bedtime is going to turn into a late sleep in. Yeah. For some it does, which is great. So if you have one of those children, yay, that's great. And they eventually get there because my 9-year-old's like that now. But yeah, that whole sleep begets sleep, that early bedtime, right?
Which is such a mind warp, because I remember when we're first hearing that, I'm like, really? The more you sleep, the more you sleep. It seems kind of backwards, but it's true. My kids are that to a T. Too late at bedtime, up too early.
Yeah.
And it always seems to work that way. And you're right. If you have a family that, your children, the later bedtime works and they sleep in, then that's beautiful. Mm-hmm. But, if that's not working for you, then, take a look at that bedtime and see if you can play with it a little bit. And that sleep pressure we talk about is kind of balancing those awake times. Those averages are fantastic to follow, but we also want to see what's our kids' sweet spot. So it's kind of balancing that time plus their sleepy cues to get them down at the right time when they're not getting to that overtired part, because we've all seen overtired children. We've experienced it. It's a lot harder to get them down. And like you mentioned, then there's more disruptions in the night or those early mornings, which, are not fun for them or for us. So,
yeah, it's counterintuitive, but a lot of times that half hour earlier bedtime will give like an extra 45 minutes of sleep. I find they get that extra half hour at bedtime and then they'll like sleep in an extra 10 minutes or 15 minutes longer than they normally would. So yeah, why not, right? If we can give our kids some extra sleep, then let's try it. So don't be afraid of the early bedtime.